to get everything back together. I mean, it's just internet service provider problems, like ISP problems, so can't do much about it, but I'll try to at least get things online as soon as possible. Alright, it seems to be online from my side. Alright, we're live again, I think. Wait, is YouTube still live? Oh, YouTube is live, great. I don't know if it's split into two videos or anything like that, but it seems that we are live again. We're live on both sides again. Okay, that's great. Anyway, back to the game. So as I mentioned, this was played like after an entire day of lectures from me, and I think he just woke up or something. So the first game was pretty close, if I remember correctly, and because I wasn't I wasn't in the best of shape. Like I was very tired at the time, so I thought, you know what? I don't want to play something theoretical like e4, e5, knight f6, knight f3, knight c6, and play some mainline opening where there's lots of theory. And if I forget something, or if my concentration lapses a bit, then I'm going to just lose the game, something like that. So instead, I decided to play something. I've decided to play more of my bullet repertoire. I played the Elyokin defense with knight f6. It's not the first time I'm playing it in this event, but it's just something that is, while not forcing, encourages your opponent to play a lot of the obvious moves, and you can just play the obvious moves and get out of the opening fairly easily without thinking. So my opponent does indeed play e5, go like d5, c4, knight d6. It's all normal, 2 pawns attack, and here this is a bit of an inaccuracy, but he makes a sort of beginner mistake of playing c5. Well, the problem with this move is the reason why the Elyokin's defense is not such a popular opening is because you are wasting time. Like you're getting a knight kicked around the board, and you're getting white to get a big center. Like for example, after e5, knight d5, you move the knight, and you push another pawn, you move the knight again. Here, maybe something like d4 or knight f3 or knight c3, or even queen out is possible. I've seen that before. Like all of these moves help build a large center, and black has very little space thanks to these 2 pawns, and all the pieces are still undeveloped. But of course, it doesn't mean that black is instantly losing here. Oh, that's a bit loud. But it doesn't mean that black is instantly losing. Black aims to slowly just turtle for the first few moves, and then try to prove that these pawns are overextended, and to actually break them down later in the game. And with that in mind, knowing the philosophical ideas behind this opening, you can see why c5 is a bit of a mistake, because here you are actually overextending your pawn. You are allowing black to put his knight back towards the center where it controls more squares, and you are leaving these 2 pawns in a more vulnerable position. For example, prior to this, right, this pawn was safely guarded by this bishop. You can develop this pawn easily by either of these moves, and you can ask black to try and prove his point. But if c5, it's actually getting a bit hard to defend this pawn. You can see that right away there are no real good moves to defend the pawn, and if you go something like e4, black can break down your structure very quickly with something like d6 or e6 first, then d6, something like that. So I put my knight back on d5 happily, place d4, makes sense because you want to guard your structure. But notice the difference where if instead the pawn was here instead, and maybe let's say you play a normal move, and then maybe black plays something and then white plays something. Notice that now in this case your structure is much more stronger because the knight doesn't actually have an outpost anymore, compared with the position in the game where after d4 my knight is actually really nice here. If you attack it with the bishop, I can just defend it with either pawn, and black's position is much more comfortable, and these pawns actually shield black from early attacks that white can try to pull off. So next, I decided to try and break the structure immediately with d6. My knight is not under attack, I am not under pressure to do anything, and I don't have to develop my pieces yet. So I play d6 to put pressure on the structure. Bishop c4 attacking my my knight, and here I could have taken d takes c5 is probably the way to go, because now I open up protection of my knight from my queen, and if takes, this is very very weak. I can play something like e6 soon and target both of the pawns, and this will be very comfortable for black. But instead, I go for the more natural response, because I'm autopiloting. Since you attack my knight, I just defend my knight and prepare to break down the center afterwards. And here he plays knight f3, very natural. You want to strengthen your structure, but it actually gives me time to take on c5 again to do the same thing. Because of my autopiloting, normally when white plays knight c3, black plays knight c6, knight f3, knight c6, to contest the same set of squares. So a bit of a mistake from me. When I see this kind of inaccurate moves, I should actually take note during the game to see what actually changed between the normal variations. Like what did white concede, and how can I punish that? So the way to punish that in this point would have been to taken the c pawn. I had two opportunities to do that, and both times I didn't do it. But here, white finally realizes that he shouldn't allow me to take on c5, so he takes himself using the c pawn. Take back, and he castles to get out of safety first. So I just chop the pawns, give my bishop some air, and play bishop c5. So pretty much the most useful diagonal for my bishop. Of course, I could also develop it here, but maybe I want to move my knight there in the future. It remains to be seen. So bishop g5, attacking my queen. This is a thematic idea. Oftentimes when you manage to get a pawn on e5, you want to take advantage of the fact that black cannot easily block the pin or block the attack on the queen by moves like f6 or knight f6, or even knight e7, because it restricts a lot of black position, and you can threaten some nasty attacks and bring more pieces in. So here I play queen b6, attacking the pawn that was previously guarded by the bishop here. He takes my knight, I take back with pawn, and here he makes a little bit of a mistake by playing queen takes d5. So the reason why this isn't so good is this gives me actually a lot of development with tempo, and doesn't prevent my threat of taking on b2 here. Well, sort of, it temporarily is temporarily defended by his threat on my bishop, but very quickly I can push his queen away with bishop e6. He has to move his queen back to try and defend the pawn. I play h6 first, chasing away the bishop, and here I think did I just trade? Did I trade, or did I play bishop d4? Alright, I traded. Pawn takes. If queen takes, I take the pawn. So pawn takes, rook d8, attacking the queen further. Queen c3, and now I just castle after the queen has been placed on some awkward square where it's sort of obstructed by its own pawn and stuck to defending this pawn in order to develop the knight here. And then it'll get very awkward because the queen has to do a lot of things, but it's not really doing a lot. So I play, he develops the knight with knight a3, trying to get the knight here. I play rook f e8, centralizing my rooks, going to target these two weak pawns and try to make use of my pin here. So rook f d1, and here, let me see. What was the problem? I think I just played, I played bishop g4 just to pin the knight to the rook, and also maybe possibly I'm just going to take the knight and use my pressure on this pawn here to just win the pawn back and go after this pawn next. Knight c4 was played, defending and attacking my queen at the same time. So I just played queen c5. So pinning the knight to the queen, not really pinning, but just doing all the same things while also keeping my queen on the diagonal. So I'm still pinning the pawn, I'm still exerting pressure here. And if knight moves away, I do want to take the queen to damage the structure even further. So knight d6, trying to get a nice outpost over here. But I think, I took the queen to damage the structure first. Then I take the knight so that basically just this pawn is weak, so I can take the pawn here. G takes f3, I take the pawn, king f2, trying to defend the pawns and get the king active in the endgame. And I play rook e7. So I'm trying to double up here and pin the knight to the rooks. So he moves the rooks away immediately. I double up, he trades, and now I have control over the file. I'm trying to play something like rook d2 and snap off this pawn. So he plays rook e2, preventing me from doing that, trying to get more control over the file. Because if you get a heavy piece on an open file, it means nothing if all of the infiltration squares are protected. And open file is only as strong as the infiltration squares. So here I just play h5 first. I think my idea was to restrict the knight or something. I forgot how. But basically I wanted to move my pawns this way, and then afterwards go after this pawn and this pawn. He moves the rook. I play my idea. I'm not actually trying to take the knight because the rook is pinning the pawn to my king. However, after this move, I now have an idea of trying to trap the rook as well, because now the rook has placed itself in a very awkward spot. So I move my king first, moving out of the pin. Now I'm threatening to take the knight. Now so he has to move his knight, and now his rook has very few squares. He can only move here and here right now. So at the moment, the rook only has 2 squares left. So I try to take away these squares by playing a6. However, I should probably, because I wanted to win the rook entirely, by playing a6. Maybe something like even b6 and then play f6. So this is actually in retrospect a very obviously slow idea. What I could have done was to just trap the rook directly by playing something like f5. I think would be better, because here his rook is completely squareless, I guess, and he has to move the knight to a very passive square, like let's say h1 to go to f2 and reroute. Because if he doesn't move his knight very quickly, I'm going to play something like king h2, and then his rook has nowhere to go and his knight cannot defend his rook because all of these squares are protected by my pawns. So his best try would have either probably been to move his knight immediately, probably here, or something like that, to give some space for his rook to drop back, or play something like e4 to contest this structure right away. And but anyway, I play a6, which is the idea to trap the rook along these files, and this trap just dissipates instantly after he plays knight e4. So now his rook actually has a lot of retreat squares to go, and his knight is looking at some juicy fox over here. So I spot the threat. I just play king g7, taking care of this square, and he plays knight g3, going back. And now this is obviously a mistake, because he just wasted time going back and forth and give me more time to actually make this kind of trapping rook idea more of a possibility, because I have more time. But instead I play king h6, chasing the rook away, knight e4, going back again, which is a blunder, because here I can play f5, threatening both the knight and the rook, and this would be completely winning. However, I did not spot this. Instead, I was too fixated on my original idea of somehow trapping the rook without realizing that the knight is no longer blocking the rook's access of the first rank. So I was just sort of blinded, I guess, by his repeating knight moves, and I thought I had all the time in the world, so I just played d6. Now the rook has no squares on this 5th rank and has to retreat to the 1st rank. So he plays rook g1, so natural, understandable, because f6 would be f6 or f5 would have been a big threat, and I played knight e5, centralizing my knight, trying to get my knight somewhere where I can try and infiltrate and target the squares around the king and try to target the pawns. So rook p1, going after my pawn, but here I have a nice way to defend the pawn with knight c4. Now this knight is also tied down to the defense of this square over here, because that my knight is protecting that square as well. My knight is defending the pawn, and the rook doesn't really have a lot of places to go. And if he tries to contest my control of the file, I can just take and win the pawn with check. So rook b4, trying to attack my knight, but I just play b5, solidify the structure. He can't ever get to my a pawn. Not ever, actually. He can, but it will take a very long time, because if I didn't move anything, it's actually impossible to attack my pawn with his rook without getting attacked. What I mean by that is, like, for example, this square is taken by my pawn, this square is protected by my knight, and to get to the 6th rank to attack my pawn, he would have to go somewhere here, but this square is currently protected by my king, and f6 would have chased it back all the way. And even if it managed to get all the way somehow without moving, it would waste a lot of time, and he can't contest using this file either, because for the same reasons I mentioned. I can just trade, he takes, and then I'll take with check. So a4, trying to weaken my outpost. I play f5 here, trying to remove the knight so I can infiltrate with my rook and then get some magic going. I'm threatening to, like, let's say if the knight moves somewhere, and maybe here, just an example, I can check and then take this pawn, and if he moves somewhere else, I can take this pawn with check, and I can manage to get some sort of a mating setup. So when I threatened his knight, he decided to take, because if I take his knight, he'll take my knight, and it will be slightly better for him, I think. If I take the pawn, he takes the pawn, I take here, and move somewhere, maybe here, then this would have been better for him, I think, because his king and pawns are more. My pawn is like, let's say if I take, is this a draw? Actually, if this happens, I think he goes to defense that pawn, and then he has 2 connected pass pawns, and he is better. So it takes b, so I retake the pawn, and then he has to retreat his knight. So he plays knight c5, trying to attack my rook, but I was planning to remove my rook anyway. So I check, rook d2, king e1. You don't want to go here because I can take here. So he plays this move, keeping an eye on my rook, and I just take the h2 pawn. So rook takes b5, exchanging pawns, but I'm winning another pawn after knight takes e3, and there might be some mating setups over here. He plays rook b6, trying to perhaps get some counterplay, exert some pressure on my king, but it will take him many moves to get an attack on my pawn over here. For example, like this, it will take some time, and I can do some other stuff. So my king can even move away, or I can advance my pawns. But he's just trying to prevent me from getting 2 connected pass pawns on the G and H file. Knight d5, attacking the rook, trying to reroute my knight to a more useful square. Rook b3, now releasing the tension on my pawns and my king, and now this is very comfortable already. King g5, I advance my king first before pushing my pawns. Knight e6, this check doesn't really do anything. I just play king h4. Now, king h4 is probably not correct, I think, because I think it ended up making it harder for me to push my pawns because my king is in the way. Probably better was because king h6 wouldn't have done anything. King f6 would have threatened the knight, pushed the knight away, or invited this, and then I can come along this way instead. So to support my pawns better. Probably what I should have played. So, but anyway, I play king h4, thinking that okay, I want to get in, and then push my pawns. Then he plays knight f8, attacking my pawn. But this only helps me push my pawn more because he has given up some control that he could have had from e6, and I just push my pawn because it doesn't seem that he's doing anything to stop it. Moves his knight back. Maybe a better try here would have been rook b5, maybe this, something like this, and with this coming. But it's also still completely winning for me. So g4, pushing my pawn, trying to get connected pass pawns. F takes, which is definitely a mistake because it makes things easier for me. It helps me get my nice double connected pass pawns. And here I realized that moving my king to h4 here is a mistake earlier because it made things tougher for me to support my h pawn from pushing. So I decided to take towards the center with h takes g4, and now I sort of justify my king h4 earlier, and my king here is perfectly placed to escort my pass pawns. Okay, so c4, trying to get some counterplay with his pass pawn. I just move my knight away. I'm not sure if I could have moved it to a better square. I don't think so, right? Because this square is guarded, this square is guarded, this square is guarded, this square is guarded, this square is guarded. So I can only move here or here. I can only move here or here. So maybe I could have even just pushed my pawn. Could I? If I do push, like let's say if I just sack the knight, if he takes, then I queen first. So, no wait, he wouldn't move. He would move here. Then this would have been a bit messy. Yeah, so I probably couldn't sack the knight. Yeah. Okay, so knight e7. I place knight f4, trying to block my pawns. I play rook c2, sort of getting out of the way and also pressuring the pawn. So he defends his pawn, I attack his rook, and here I actually win on time. So the only way to maintain his control over the pawn would be to play rook a4, and then I can just get my king in, or just push my pawns, and probably g3 first, g3 then king g4, push the knight away, then advance, and I'll be very easily winning even with just 25 seconds on the clock. So the first game was somewhat close. There were some missed opportunities to win quicker on my side, and there was some missed opportunities on his side to punish on my missteps, to put up more tricky resistance, I guess, and make me play the best moves. So that was a little bit there, but it's fine. Both of us won in the best shape, and the game wasn't too terrible, I think. So in the next game, it's my turn to have the white pieces. I decided to start with d4. You return with d5, c4, c6. So we have here a Slav, and I play knight c3. So not really what I play normally, but I wonder if it's right after I attended a workshop by my Grandmaster Kevin Go, or Grandmaster by the University Chess Alliance, Varsity Chess Alliance, that I played this line or something, because I remember in one of the workshops they mentioned about how I think it was the one by Grandmaster Kevin Go. He mentioned that this is the old main line and how it wasn't so accurate, so on and so forth. So I think I tried it in this game, and I decided to play something that I don't usually play, which is this main line, d4, d5, c4, c6, and knight c3. So the main line, And he responds with knight f6, so very logical. We are all fighting over control over these squares. And here, after thinking it for a bit, I considered bishop g5, I think, but then I just transpose back into what I usually play in play knight f3. So he plays e6, so this is the semi-Slav, I think. And bishop g5 here is the main line, I think. Yeah. So h6 invites a Moscow or anti-Moscow variation, but I decide to just make things simple by just taking. And after queen takes, I play e3. Now I'm preparing to take and play bishop d3. So he plays knight d7, developing the knight to somewhere like here instead, because this square has been taken by the pawn, and my earlier capture now means that he has to spend another move with the queen in order to develop the knight to an active square. So queen c2, moving my queen out of the way, preparing takes and bishop d3, plays g6, trying to develop the bishop this way, which is I think a bit of a mistake, because the nice thing about this semi-Slav structure is that the bishop has a very nice home here on d6 and is still fine on the slightly more passive e7. So spending a time to play e6 and bishop g7, I feel it's a bit too slow, and only amplifies his light square weakness, light square bishop weakness further. And also his knight is a bit passive since he has to take the time to retreat a queen, which he hasn't done yet. So c takes d5, according to my plan, e takes d5, so he wants to open up his diagonal for his bishop, and I've developed my bishop to e2. This is in response to his g6 move. Like I mentioned in the previous stream, normally white likes to develop his bishop here to d3, but in this case, because of these pawns here, it is structurally, in general as a principle, potentially more useful to move the bishop to e2 instead. I see a chat comment about some sort of advertising link, and I haven't learned how to moderate my chat yet, so I'm not sure if I just delete it or remove it, or what am I supposed to do with these kind of comments? What am I supposed to do with these kind of comments? How do I moderate it? Spam. Just going to remove him, right? So wait, it's not removed here on my screen. How do I remove it? Alright, did it disappear? Wait, it hasn't disappeared yet. Okay. Alright, okay, it's gone. So I removed the link, and we can get back to the game. So here I developed to bishop e2, which means that it might have more prospects here if he maybe decides to play, maybe develop the knight somewhere and then play bishop g4. It might become more useful here. But in retrospect, maybe bishop d3 is still fine, because the big difference when compared to the normal Vienna kettle structures is that he has already played h6. So this structure is a bit more weak than the usual mini triangle here on the king side. And also, developing here to e2 might not have been so prospectful as in the usual Vienna kettle structures, because of this pawn chain here on the queen side, which will obstruct my bishop if I do eventually develop it here to f3. However, I don't think it's a bad move. It's just a bit passive, and it will still probably be very useful hiding here on e2 if I go for some sort of minority attack in the future. So bishop g7, he follows through with his plan. I just castle, he castles, rook a b1, so I'm preparing for a minority attack. Maybe I could have just played b4 directly, but I wanted to prepare it so that I can play b4, b5, and only a4 if necessary right away, consecutively. So he plays a6, trying to grab control over this square, but I play b4 anyway. I want to just break through, and if he trade, I want to keep my rook here on b1, so I don't want him to take. b6, so this is definitely weakening. Probably he should have stopped me from playing b5 forever by playing b5 himself, because b6 only helps me to play b5 more easily, because his pawns are no longer protecting each other. So I play a4 first, and after he plays bishop b7, and then I play b5. So now if he pushes one pawn, I can take the other, and then the b6 pawn which he pushed earlier will become a big weakness. So let's say, for example, if he pushes here, I can take here, and now this pawn is under a lot of pressure. And if he pushes here, I can take here, and then again this pawn is under a lot of pressure. So I push b5 now, and he plays c5 to try and close it off by take on a, and now this comes with a tempo, and after rook takes, which is a mistake, I just take back with my bishop. So even if he had taken with his bishop, I would have been fine trading here and playing this position. I don't think I would have taken here, but oh yeah, this pawn is hanging. This pawn is hanging, and this pawn is going to fall next. If he takes this pawn is still guarded by my queen. I have pressure here, there's some tension here, and my knight's very active, so you can jump around. So this would be a nice position. Let's see. Yeah, maybe queen d6. Then I can maybe keep putting on more pressure, chase the rook away with not that, I'll hang my knight. So maybe here, I'll defend my knight, put pressure on the rook, and try to win this pawn next. And this will be a very comfortable position for me. But instead, he makes things even easier with rook takes a6. So I win the exchange, and put a lot of pressure on his queen side. So my minority attack was very successful. So rook c8, trying to defend the pawns. Here, I realized that the pawn is hanging. I take the pawn, he moves his queen, and I just retreat my knight back with tempo, attack the queen, and I take the pawn, trying to just crash through. I'm happy to trade because I'm up material, and I just want to trade. So I move my knight here on the rim for temporarily, just so that I can maybe prevent his king from activating so simply. Take the hanging pawn and just trade all day. Pin the knight to the bishop. Pin the bishop to the king. And now there's actually no good way for him to defend the bishop, because if he comes back here to defend the bishop, I can just take the knight, and I'll be completely winning here. So he moves his king away, gives up the bishop, but now his pieces are still very restricted thanks to my knight over here. He retreats his knight, and this knight is defended by his bishop, so I can't take that. But I just move my king closer, bishop e5, targeting the pawn probably, but not really, because if he takes the pawn, I'll take his knight. Just threaten the bishop, force him to move away, and he has to go all the way back to h8 if he wants to maintain control of the knight. So he plays bishop d6, and I take his knight, king g6, and the rest is very quick because I just pin his bishop to the king to force a trade. Take pieces, just push pawns. And has made it unnecessarily messy, but yeah, just push pawns, and did the classic ladder mate. So that was nice. The second game was much smoother, and I'd say that the general theme was that he didn't. What he could have done better was to try and push me to find more accurate moves, but a lot of the time he made slight mistakes and slight inaccuracies that made things easier for me. Like for example, even the in the first game when he repeated knight moves. Where was it? Yeah, here, and he repeated knight moves over here. Like it's not bad, but it just made things easier for me. So maybe he could have improved on putting up resistance if in a slightly worse or equal positions, and I should improve on noticing and punishing mistakes, and sort of like finding the killing blow better. I guess I need better killing instinct. Probably a bit dull since I haven't played bullet in so long. And next, just drink some water first. So in the next game, I'm already in the top 8, I think. Is this top 8? There's 4 people here. There's 4 people here. And oh no, top 8 is here. No, not here. That's not top 8. Top 8 is here. It's here. Right? I mean there's 1, 2, 3, 4 here. Then there's 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh yeah, so I'm in top 8 already. Yeah, so I'm in top 8 already. And at this point, I'm quite comfortable with the tournament, and I'm much more chill because initially I was afraid of making too big of a fool of myself and just crashing and burning and stuff like that. But after getting the top 8, I just wanted to maybe try out different stuff, maybe try and what do you call it? Maybe basically just have fun, I guess. And in this next game, it's against Nap. Let me just check my DMs. When did we play this? Oh, this game against these games against Nap, I feel like quite memorable. Because Nap did a very good job of attacking. Like he likes to attack a lot, and although the score might suggest otherwise, he did applied a lot of pressure on me even though I knew I was completely winning. So converting and having the killing instinct is something that I need to train. So I decided to play e4 this time. Try out new things. I don't have any pressure of getting results because I'm already in the top 8, and to me that's good enough. So I decided to take the opportunity to try different stuff with different people as I played e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6, and he surprised me with this Petrov. Not a lot of people play Petrov, so I just took. He took, and this line is I think is what people use to show why you shouldn't copy white's moves as black, because after queen e2, white has a very devious threat of playing if the knight retreats, for example, white has a very devious threat of playing knight c6, so covering both squares that the queen can go to and applying check at the same time, so therefore winning the queen. But if played accurately, actually this line is actually okay, it's fine, and I think it's actually quite equal, only slightly better for white, if I remember correctly. I've studied this very long ago though, since I barely meet anybody playing the Petrov, and even fewer playing this symmetrical line. So I just played through the moves. Luckily for me enough, the moves were very simple, so I could remember everything. Queen e7, queen takes e4, d6, d4, giving the piece back. D takes e5, d takes e5, knight c6, bishop e5, bishop d7, and castles. I think this is all theory. except for maybe instead of castles, I think also popular is something like knight c3. This is also popular. So knight c3 or bishop or castles, I think, are the main moves in this position. I choose castles so that it's a bit more tricky in my opinion, because if normally players who play this are lacking a bit of opening knowledge or a bit lower rated, so they might fall into some traps like that involve rook e1 to do some tactics with the alignment of the queen and king over here. But he castles right away. Castles kings queen side. This is also standard, I think. Not too sure though. And here I just decide to defend my pawn sufficiently this time, because I no longer have any tactics since his king is no longer on e8. He plays queen's he played what did he play? He played queen e6. He played queen e6. I just played knight c3, developing my pieces. A6. I assume that this queen e6 move was to give his bishop some room. Played a6 here, and I was really tempted to sack the bishop, or even sack the queen. I was very tempted to sack the queen or sack the bishop and try and get some stupid attack over here, but it didn't work, so I just retreated my bishop with tempo. Bishop c4, queen f5, trying to initiate a trade, but I want it to be on my terms, so I just played bishop f4, so that even after the trade I still have control over the e5 pawn. So I'm trying to cling onto my extra pawn over here. So bishop e6, try and trade off pieces, I guess. I take here because now I can win the pawn, and although it's sort of a trade, but I'm trading a better pawn, because taking this pawn, like although they seem to be of equivalent value, like one is on c2, one is on f7, like that seems like the equivalent pawns in our structure, like a castle on opposite sides, it should be the corresponding pawns. But my capture here is much stronger, because my capture here makes my extra e pawn from an extra pawn into an extra pass pawn, and his capture over here doesn't really translate into much, except for maybe even tempo for me to develop my rook. So I play rook ac1 immediately, trying to take advantage of this, pushing his bishop back. And here I probably could have played something more active, like maybe knight e4, knight d5, not knight d5, yeah, knight d5, get my pieces in. But instead I just wanted to solidify my position, because I was aware that I was better here, and I just played e6. So getting this strong combination here, where he cannot really get my pieces out without advancing my pawn further. And this move also shows my lack of killer instinct, because in this overwhelmingly strong position, I probably shouldn't have played in this manner. Like there was no need for e6, since this would only probably overextend my pawn. Although punishing that overextension will require some time from black, and I can do other stuff. But it's not very accurate, I think. So not a very good move. Bishop e7, so developing the bishop. Knight e2, again a bit too passive. Maybe I could have played knight e4 instead if I wanted to really maneuver my knight. That way I would still but then again, knight e4 doesn't, I don't really have any squares to end up to. Maybe here, I guess. But yeah, I think the reason why I played this more passive move is because I couldn't see any squares for me to end up to, so I wanted to maybe reroute here, attack the bishop, and move in from there. But looking at it now, my knight really doesn't have anywhere good to go from here anyway, and rook g3 is just a one move track. So I don't think knight e2 is a very good move. And the reason why I wanted to move my knight away was not only to get it more active, but also I wanted to apply some sneaky pressure here against the king, and try to prevent his knight from being able to move. So that was why I was so insistent on moving away this knight, and I didn't want to contest the d file with something like like rook e, maybe not rook e, rook c is probably better because now the rook is not doing anything. I didn't want to play this move because I would lose the pressure that I wanted to exert on his king. So anyway, I played knight e2, played knight b4, which is a mistake because knight e2 was designed specifically to stop his knight from moving, and he moved his knight. So I take on c7, king b8. Now I have a windmill, so I take again, and he makes the mistake of moving right back into my windmill. So you said probably the most accurate move would be rook a8, just to avoid all the checks and prevent things from snowballing. But at this point, I'm really completely winning. Knight rook c8, but since he moves king c8, I just move back rook c7, check again. He has to step back into the windmill, and I threatened to take up the knight with check here, and he just resigned in this position. So the first game seemed very straightforward. Not really straightforward. I think it was mainly due to having a pleasant opening and getting a lot of free tempo from his outward pieces, getting more space, and then just this one move blunder, which enabled sort of justified my idea. In the next game, he won, and here he played e4. I decided to oblige e5, knight c3, knight f6. So I was intending to, if he played knight f3, I would be willing to go into the same line. I was cheekily thinking of maybe if here, and if he takes, maybe I'll go for the same move and play the same opening and see how he responds. But he played the, I forgot what this opening is called. I think it's the Vienna game, right? Because it's not the Gambit yet. He hasn't played f4, so I think this is still the Vienna game. And the two main moves I think are this and this. So I prefer the knight f6 one because it's more, I think it's a bit more confrontational, not so drawish. And after f4 here, so we now transpose into the Vienna Gambit. I just play the main line, d5, f takes, knight takes, queen f3. So he's threatening some sort of cheeky attacks maybe after this and this. Wait, let me check my. Is there something wrong with my stream? Okay, not really. Alright. And here I just play the main moves, knight c3, d takes c3, bishop e6. So solidifying, not allowing him to push his pawn any further, preparing to develop my bishop and castle. So bishop e3, I just develop my knight first so I can play bishop c5. The castle's queen side here, which I don't think he's supposed to do so quickly. Normally I see Vienna players castle king side and take advantage of the open f file, but I guess it works. I play c5 here, trying to advance my pawns in. I try to advance my pawns first. If I decide to castle king side, and I can maybe get some pawns pushing, some pawn storm, and I want to create some shelter for my pieces to develop more naturally, I think. So bishop b5, taking advantage of the control I conceded by pushing my pawn. I play queen a5, trying to go for a very sharp line over here. I didn't calculate it fully, but I thought after bishop takes, I had to play king takes because if I take here, I think he can play king b1, and then not king b1 first. I think here threaten threaten checkmate, and then if I say castle king b1, I think he's better here. And then I felt that if I take and he takes, he sacrifices the exchange, I didn't see any way for him to to actually checkmate me here in this position, and I could go for some counterplay and take advantage of his undeveloped pieces. So that's why I decided to take with my king over here, playing with fire. And if he doesn't punish me, my king is actually going to be very safe very soon. If I can move my king and get my rook out or something, then it'll be much better for me, I think. And my bishop would do its good job of anchoring my position. So he does indeed correctly take on d5, and objectively maybe I should have just went back. Maybe here would have obstructed my bishop, maybe just here, and I should have just considered that I blundered the pawn, and he would have to move his rook back because now I am indeed threatening to take. Maybe after something like here, I can take the pawn, and we get this more equal position. He's still slightly better, of course, because my king is a bit more exposed. However, fortunately, I decided, because I didn't see any quick checkmate for him, I decided to just make this a double edge position and try to win this game. So I just take, I accept the challenge, he checks, I take king c8 as planned, and here he makes a very big mistake, bishop g5, which he told me in the game, after the game, that he was trying to checkmate me here, but didn't notice that my queen was already protecting that square. It was nagging in the fact that my queen was still tied down here and I couldn't take the pawn yet. However, this gave me actually enough time to get my pieces out, get my king safe, and actually fight back. So I played h6, kicking the bishop. He tries to gain a tempo by attacking my queen. I just check, and here I win the bishop. So now I'm back ahead. I'm ahead again. Up the rook, in fact. So if I manage to get my bishop out and my king somewhere tucked over here, I'll be able to checkmate his king very soon. So he played queen takes f7. I'm not afraid. I just take a pawn. He pushes the pawn, and here I was preparing to just give up my bishop if he ever intends to push e7. So that's why I left my rook and my bishop here, and I wanted to try and eventually play something like a6, tuck my king away, and attack his king. So queen d4, I started check first so that I cover this threat over here, this check. I cover this check, I cover this check. And I could have traded queens here, I think. But if I play here, he has this, and checkmate. Not checkmate. It doesn't have checkmate because my queen covers. So I probably could have played this as well. But then force if he doesn't move, like let's say if he develops, then I can force a queen trade. No, I can't force a queen trade because his knight is protecting. And if I take, he checkmates me. So yeah, probably maybe I couldn't have played. Maybe I could have played that, but I don't see how much better this is. So in the game, I just took the pawn because I thought that taking this pawn would allow me to have more access to certain files, and I wanted to bring my bishop into the game to help checkmate the king. Here he played e7, which I have no problems with, since I was planning to just throw away my bishop anyway. In hindsight, I probably didn't even have to take the pawn. Maybe I could have is there anything I could have done? Maybe I could have rerouted my queen or something, but maybe play something like this and take back here. Maybe something like this instead. Should have been better. But I was planning to throw away the bishop, so I just threw away the bishop. Trying to connect rooks. Takes with the queen, play rook d8. And get ready to move my king to safety. So he checks here. I just move my king away. Rook, king b1, queen d1, king b2, a6. So now I have a safe haven. Queen e5, king a7, queen c5, and here I think I shouldn't have played this queen d1 check. And the reason I played it was because I didn't want this rook f3 and knight f3 to come with tempo and free his queen, and that would make it a lot harder to checkmate him. So instead I played rook queen d1 check first, so that if he tries to develop his knight in any way, I can take his rook. But the thing about this is that this gives his queen access to a lot of checks. And after here a6, e5, king a7, queen c5, what I should have done was went back to b8, because there's simply nowhere better to go. But due to the fact that if I try to block with b6, this actually blunders mate in 1. And I saw that during the game, but I suddenly thought that, hey, you know what, I'm still winning, let's just play b6 anyway, and I just played b6 and I just blundered mate. So that was very embarrassing. I just after managing to survive his attack and fight back and transform it into a better position, I just blundered mate in 1. So yeah, that was an embarrassing loss. So in the third game, I decided to play I think maybe a bit more carefully. Maybe. I'm not really sure what I did, but I continued with e4, because if he wants to go with this line, I'm the one attacking and he's the one defending. And since he likes to attack so much, being on the defensive side will really highlight his weakness. So I played e4, c6 Caro-Kann. This surprised me because he deviated. d4, d5, e5, c5. So this is what Lau likes to play. Or disgruntled Petzer. What is Lau's Twitch name again? Yeah, disgruntled Petzer. So this is what he likes to play, and what he believes in. But I didn't want to play some sort of main line where I take the pawn after something like knight c6 or e6, and then I play something like a3 and try to hold on to my pawn and play something positional like that. Instead, I wanted to attack him. So I just after c5, I just went, whoa, let's go c4. No matter what, I'm not going to let you attack me, because you feel confident attacking, I'm just going to attack you back. So I just lashed out my pawns. I'm trying to convert this into a more like a d4 opening than with an extra pawn on e5 for some reason. Plays bishop f5. So this is very weird, because normally when you play this opening, you're not really worried about your bishop just yet. More likely, you want to try and crack down on this white pawn center, and naturally you'll be able to have a nice diagonal for your bishop. So bishop f5 is a bit of a mistake, but I was thinking, hey, you know what, maybe I can try to transpose this in some sort of tile variation, since that was what I studied in preparation for the NUS Invitationals. So I played h4, which probably isn't good. I mean, like, what is this weird opening? But he plays h6, trying to give his bishop some room, which I know is a mistake, because this actually gives me lots of tile ideas. So I play g4, trying to kick the bishop back into a passive square. So bishop h7, and here I play a very thematic pawn sacrifice e6. So again, probably not the best idea. I probably should have at least finally started to develop my pieces, but instead I played e6, f takes e6, and I tried to take advantage of his weak light squares immediately with bishop d3. And here he should have traded, I think. Traded here and maybe play something like knight f6 maybe, or maybe something like knight f6. And then after check, just play this position, because since he didn't trade, I was able to take on h7 after he takes the rook. Now I can play queen d3 with tempo. Now I'm attacking the rook. He defends his rook with knight f6, but I still have this check. So that's why I think the other variation will be better, where he plays we can play this knight move without actually moving this rook into such an awkward square, where it's sort of boxed in by its own pawns. King d7, only move. G5, trying to open things up. H6 is probably best, but I would have played knight bishop here and he would have more pressure. And it's mostly superficial pressure though, I think, because in comparison with the tile variation, my pawns and my queen side is actually much weaker. My king is more exposed and his counterplay is probably a lot more potent. So instead I played knight e4, which I think loses because I take the rook and he doesn't really have good counterplay, because after queen e5 I actually have king f1. So I saw this in the game, I saw this during the game, but I thought that I calculated a few threats. I was calculating a bunch of stuff like this, and like how things would go, and how my queen would protect this square, things like stuff like that. So I was calculating very deep into the variations. I saw a lot of lines, and then I thought, hey, you know what? At the end of the line, or in one of the lines I calculated, I had to play something like I think I played something like king f1, and then something like knight b4, and then something like something like a bunch of moves, and then I just thought, you know what? Actually, I don't really need to play king f1 first. Maybe since I'm going to play king f1 no matter what I do, I might as well just play bishop d2 first and attack the queen. So this was a horrifying blunder, I think, because after bishop knight b4, I'm still fine over here. It makes it a lot harder to play something like king f1, because after trades, then wait, let me think. Makes it a lot harder to play king f1 because this would trap my rook, and he doesn't have to his knight hasn't moved away yet. So here I just started to panic a little bit, and I played king d1, now moving this way, trying to guard this square because my queen is no longer guarding it. But this is a blunder, because now he can play this fork instead, and I move to king c1, trying to guard this square still, and he played, fortunately for me, knight takes a2, which gives me more chances. So I sack the exchange, but in return, I get to play knight f3 and develop my knight with tempo, get my king safe, and maybe eventually turn the tides, sort of. But again, another move order problem. I saw this knight f3, and I saw this knight c3, and I saw like queen takes, and afterwards I will try and sacrifice my exchange with something like rook h3 and get my queen back into the game, something like that. But I thought, you know what, since the queen is going to take this, if the queen takes here, I can play knight c3 in that position anyway, so why don't I just move my rook first, which was terrible, because not only does he have a queen check, which I defend with my bishop here, he also has this check over here that wins my knight. So the reason why I ended up defending with the bishop instead of my knight is because I realized that one of the differences is that I want my knight to be the one defending here on d2. If I think the knight is more useful defending here than the bishop, and if the two pieces were reverse places, if my knight is here, my bishop is here, it's a bit more solid, I think, because I already blundered. I saw that I already blundered. So queen takes here, bishop c3, check, queen c2, king c2, and here he has mate in one with this very classic pattern. I think it's called the dovetail mate or something. But fortunately for me, he missed it. He just took the material, and I tried to just sacrifice more material and try to hold on here. Like, this was a setup that I saw, since I was forced to give up material, and maybe miracles can happen, because here I'm down an exchange and a bunch of pawns, but since the pieces were not that big of a difference, I still had some hopes of maybe outplaying him in the end game, and maybe trying to hold a draw or something with some sort of fortress or something. So queen f5 checking, forcing a queen trade, and I have to trade queens, no choice. But that means that he's no longer attacking, and I'm in more comfortable territory because I'm no longer being attacked, and I can try and play for tricks. So if you want to win trade pieces, if you want to draw trade pawns, I start off with d takes c5. Now this move has a lot of different uses. It opens my bishop attack of this pawn here, and it tries to make things awkward for his dark square bishop and his rook. So currently my pieces are more active than his, and I'm trying to try and make up for my lack of material with some maybe restrictive play. So I defend my pawn first. He plays e6, opening the bishop, and here I play king d3, just getting my king to a more active square. He could have taken my pawn right away, but instead he decides to trade pawns first. So we trade pawns. I can't let him push his pawns any further. This pawn mass is big enough as it is. So he has 3 connected pass pawns. And he doesn't want to take first because he doesn't want to trade pawns. So he pushes the pawn first, stopping my pawn and blocking my pawn on the dark square. So here I decide to play bishop b4. So challenging him, if he wants to try and take my pawn, he will have to trade more pawns. He have to try and trade more pawns to try and achieve that. So he plays bishop here, trying to attack this pawn at the same time. I play knight d4 check. So I'm trying to maneuver my knight here and maybe get in some squares. So maybe I'm trying to blockade. So I play knight here, defending my pawn. Now both pawns are defended sufficiently. Maybe I can get my king in. And here he plays a very nice move, rook h8, trying to attack over here, exploit my lack of pieces, gain a lot of space with his pieces, and eventually just snowball his pawns. So I play king e3. I have to defend my knight, and here I thought both rook h3, rook h4. No, rook h4 can't be played. But rook h3, rook h1 would be very nice for black. In fact, even rook h5, just simply winning the pawn, since I have no way to defend it again. Like no real good way, because if I defend here, I think there's this move, and if I take, there's this, and I'll be completely lost with no hope at all. So I think even rook h5 to win the pawn is good enough. And of course, if rook h3 to pin my knight and rook h1 to gain activity from behind, I would be even better. So he played rook h3, which is very nice, and I played king f4, just trying to get out the pin and maybe start to unravel with something like knight e3 and forking the pawns. Here he managed to find a very nice tactic, bishop g5, seeing that if I take with my king, he can take my knight, and if I take with my knight, as mentioned before, there's this very nice tactic where he can take my bishop. However, to my surprise, after I took with the knight, he didn't play rook h4. For some reason, he suddenly he played this move instead. He thought that this was winning, bishop b3, and he missed this bishop rook h4. Rook b3 instead of rook h4. And sure enough, of course, it's still winning. He's still up a lot of material. However, this gives me a lot more chances. This shows me that he's not as tactically aware in the endgame, and I have a lot more chances of not only holding, but being able to pull some tricks with my knight over here. So first I played bishop c3, so solidifying, sort of keeping his rook restricted, and maybe he should go after this pawn here, and I can go something like king e5 and take this pawn and get some counterplay going. But instead he plays b6, maybe getting a little bit desperate. He wants to trade everything and push everything and make things easy. But here, even if he offered a draw, I probably wouldn't have taken it, because I think I have a lot of tricks over here and I can try to outplay him, because these few blunders and mistakes have really signified to me how unconfident he is, and regardless of the objective position, I think I have a lot of practical chances. So I take the pawn. Now I have one less loose pawn to worry about. Remember, I want to draw at the very least, so trading pawns is good. So a takes, and here maybe he should have taken with the rook, because my idea is to take the pawn here. So taking back the rook would have probably allowed him to have more winning chances. So, but a takes b6 is of course still winning. King e5, now I get my king in. I'm blockading the pawns. I'm threatening to take, and he has currently no pass pawns. Like, of course, these are all connected pass pawns, but they can't really move because they are blockaded by my pieces, and the rook can't really chase my king out because of my bishop pawn complex over here. So he plays b5, which is a blunder, because this actually traps his own rook. His rook has nowhere to go now. This square is guarded, this square is guarded, this square is guarded. So his pawn here, his rook here is actually trapped, and I saw this and tried to capitalize on it immediately with knight takes e6, taking a pawn, but more importantly, threatening to fork, so he doesn't have time to free his rook. And if his I accidentally skipped too far. And if his king actually moves to avoid the fork, I can trap his rook here with this nice nifty knight move. So he's forced to get at least some material, give back the exchange for it, and now I'm actually winning here, because I'm up a knight for 3 pawns, and with my active knight, active king, I am actually much better here. I'm actually winning. So he plays g5, which is a mistake because I can win another pawn to check. King f7, trying to get his king here and try to escort the pawn. I just take things easy. I play knight e3, trying to grab all the pawns with my knight, and let my king remain active over here. So he plays king here, maybe preparing to support his pawn push, because that's the only pass pawn in the position. So I just take this pawn first. I see that I have time. If he goes there, I can just go back, and if he pushes here, I can even just sack my knight. So with that, I was confident that this pawn was kept in check by my knight. So I just moved my king over to collect the other pawn and push my pawn to victory. King g3, and here I made a very critical mistake where I should have recognized that his king was not really escorting the pawn, because he would have played king h3 if that was the case, but instead he was trying to chase away my knight. So here probably the best move is something like king e4, still maintaining access to both pawns, and keeping his king away from my knight. So if king f2, trying to still go after my knight, I can actually play not yet, maybe king d4. If he pushes, I take, and if he moves annoyingly or something, then I'm still close enough to both pawns, I think. So instead I play king c5, which is a mistake, because this makes it a lot harder for me to win. He gets to my knight. I have to move my knight around a little bit, and so I take the pawn, and at this point I don't have anything better than a draw, because his pawn is far too advanced. So g3, it's a bit of a mistake, because he should have continued his trick of chasing my knight. And although my knight is still protected, this means I still have to spend time to move my king and defend my knight, because if I push my pawn, he'll take my knight and promote because he's faster, and if I move my knight, I think he can keep chasing my knight away and try to push the pawn if I move my knight too far. So I think this is a drawish position, because his pawn is too advanced. His pawn is too advanced, and fortunately for me, he pushed g3, which means that I'm completely winning because he gives me this fork, knight e2, forking a king and a pawn, and now I can sacrifice my knight for the pawn, and here I'm completely winning, so he resigned in this position. So since this is losers round 5, it's actually a best of 4, it's no longer a best of 3. So the score now is 2-1 in my favor. He still has one more opportunity to get back into the game. If he wins, we have to play an Armageddon Blitz match, I think. In the 4th game, he played e4 again, and this time I decided to mix things up because I didn't want to get attacked by his gambit, although I was pretty sure that I was somewhat better out of the opening. But because of my decision to play that kind of dual edge position, I decided to fight back in a different way. So instead of e5 and allowing him to go into another Vienna game, I decided to play the French defense instead, which can be very aggressive and dual edge if white decides to press for an advantage. So d4, d5, and he disappointed me here tremendously with e takes d5. For some reason, everyone plays the exchange now, but given the match situation, I'm ahead 2-1. Even if I draw this game, I would win and I will advance. So I wasn't as upset as usual when I see this exchange French. So I decided to I decided that my strategy this game will be, since he decided to play the exchange, I'm going to punish him for it and make him regret that decision and teach him to never play exchange French against a French player, because who enjoys that? Come on. Just kidding. But so my idea was to fully oblige white in going for equal position. No matter what he does, I'm going to just mirror it. Knight f3, knight f6, bishop f4, bishop d3, bishop d6 countering immediately. Bishop takes, queen takes, and now I'm actually better already because he allowed me to get a more active. I'm quicker to castle and my pieces are more active. So he plays bishop d3, and I just castle. So getting to safety, missing the tactic of winning the pawn here. But it's okay, since I only need a draw. I just wanted to play as solid as possible. I just castled, he castled, bishop g4. So this is very common in these positions to try and prevent him from playing c4, because that would be a bit weakening for his structure, although it's probably still fine, but a bit of a positional weakness, I think. So knight b2, so we're capturing back with the knight. I just mirror him. h3, I take I give up the light square bishop because I'm going to put all my pawns on light squares. Rook fe8 first, getting control of the file. He connects his rooks. I take the opportunity. If he wants to trade pieces, I'm going to trade pieces. So he takes, I take with the rook, and now I'm prepared to double up and basically in a position where I can never lose. Play c6, maybe develop my knight, maybe retreat my rook, play knight e4, and there's no way I lose this game. So rook ad1 instead, possibly trying for some c4 break. Rook a8, doubling my rooks, and knight g5. So trying to tickle my rook, but it just helps me to move my rook back. And after rook fe1, I'm fine with trading no matter what, but I want to maintain control over the file. So first I play h6 to kick his knight back, and then only I will maybe trade everything down and get into a super equal, nothing to do, symmetrical endgame. But instead here he takes with the rook first, I take with the rook, and knight f3, knight f6, and this is still very equal. I can play probably just c6 and maybe just enjoy my position. Knight h4 here, he's desperately trying to do something. He doesn't want to trade any further, but c4 doesn't do anything at this point because I can just take and he'll have an isolated pawn. So I think he was trying to do anything with his knight here, and he threatened to fork my rook and the queen because he was trying to create some sort of imbalance because he has to win this. He has to win this game. So queen d7, I just step out of the fork while also maintaining control of this square, so he can't even play knight f4 even if it's just to gain a tempo or reroute. So he plays c3, solidifying his pawn structure, and here I play knight e4, attacking his queen, getting my knight to a very nice dominant position. And here I play c6, just mirroring him. I don't need to win, so I'm just going to copy his moves. Rook e1, and now I just retreat back, opening all trades. So it's sort of like a bait, you know. Like previously, he keeping his rook on the d file because he doesn't want to trade rooks. So after I block the file, he plays rook e1 trying to contest. Now I open it back again so that we can trade rooks, and my knight can get into some nice juicy light squares. So he has to pretty much has to take the rook, or else he has to go back again, and nothing will be done. So he takes the rook, I take the queen, and at this point he was getting a bit desperate because his options are getting lesser and lesser, and it doesn't seem like there's anything in the position. So he tried to go for some queenside advance with b3, but not realizing that my queen was actually attacking his misplaced knight, and I just took the knight, and here in this position he resigned the game. And with that, I won the match against Nap 3-1. So next is probably my toughest match, both emotionally and over the board, against Yuki. Yuki's chess name is UCL, but Yuki. And this match was held over a couple of days because both of us were busy, and we had very tiring and bad stuff happen to both of us during this time. So both of us were definitely in terrible chess playing strength shape. Yuki probably would have gotten maybe second or third place if he didn't face me, but since we faced each other in the best of 4 semi-finals or something, since he faced me in the semi-finals, he wasn't able to do so. And the first game was a bit of a blunderfest. I played e4 because I mentioned earlier I didn't reach my goal. I'm just trying to play something different, play more e4, e6, d4. So he plays the French. So I'm very happy with that, and I play the advanced variation after c5, c3, knight c6, knight f3, queen b6, a3, c takes d4, c takes d4. This is all theory. And then bishop d7, this is also normal. Simply, it's sort of a way to avoid any bishop b5 ideas. So there are many ways for black to do it. Black can do it by playing this, playing this, playing this, playing this. Like there are many ways to sort of circumvent around this idea. So the one he chose was bishop d7, play bishop e3, just defending my pawn. But this was probably a mistake because I messed up a little bit. If I wanted to play bishop e3, I should have first played b4 or knight c3 before going for bishop e3 to make this pawn a poison pawn. But I blundered and I just played bishop e3. Fortunately for me, he didn't take the pawn. Maybe he thought it was poison in this position, which is normal to assume because in a lot of the advanced French positions, this pawn is actually untouchable. He played, so instead he developed with knight g7, trying to get the knight here in response to my bishop. And here I play knight c3. So now this pawn is indeed poisonous, because I have achieved knight c3, bishop d3 just in a different move order. But here he tried to call my bluff in the wrong moment, and he took the pawn, giving me a queen trap here with knight a4. However, during the game, I was so confident that I had the queen trap that I played a different type of queen trap, a different queen trap idea with knight b5 instead. So I'm threatening a fork here, while also trying to threaten something, preventing the queen from retreating back along the b file. So this is still winning for me because white can never avoid the forks. For example, after rook c8, I have first chasing the queen away. After queen a2, there's knight d6 check. And here I thought for a while, thinking which rook did I want to take. Now, I saw in this position that objectively, this should have been the best move, because I'm taking away the active rook, and the queen side will be much weaker. However, it was tempting to me to take this rook, because I would also win an additional pawn, and I saw that I could win this pawn as well after giving up this pawn, so I would be able to just castle and get to safety. So that was what I saw. But yeah, he played king e8, and here I had another choice to actually go back and take this rook, which is what I should have done. But I tried to get greedy a little bit, and I took the rook on h8. So now my knight is out of play. And it can't retreat to any of the squares, and his pieces are ready to ravage my queen side. Actually, give me a moment. I want to go to the bathroom, so let me just go back to the loading screen for a little bit. I'll be back soon.
Every core computers now have primary control of critical vehicle functions.
Alright, I'm back. Where was I? Oh yeah. So now his pieces are more active, and he has some counterplay. So I'm still completely winning, of course, but like objectively I'm still completely winning, but practically it's a lot harder now that I've taken the more passive rook. So knight f5, his pieces are very quickly flooding into the position. I take the pawn because this was what I planned initially, and I went through with it even though it was inaccurate. Queen takes a3, bishop d3, I want to castle as soon as possible, and here he takes my pawn, so I just take back with the f pawn, bishop b4 check, and here I can actually just play king f2 and be happy. And I can play rook f1, king g1, and then my knight can actually get back into the game. So that is what I should have played, but I thought that rook takes b4 would probably be a good opportunity to remove one of the attackers, because I was thinking the rook isn't really doing anything, and this bishop is stronger than my rook, so I want to throw away my rook and then only play king f2. Well, the problem with this is, yes, I am removing a bishop, but I'm introducing the knight. I'm introducing the knight into the position, and that comes with tempo, because two pieces are attacking here, and there might be some rook c1 threats in the future. However, fortunately for me, he played queen takes b4, which is slightly better for me, because this is what I wanted to do in the first place. I wanted to just remove one of his defenders, and now his active defender is only the queen. So, and I managed to play king f2. So I managed to do what I did. I managed to trade now, get a more safer position, and I should be better now. So king e7, trying to win back the knight. I try to give back the knight in a way that damages his structure. However, probably instead I should have played, instead of damaging his structure, I should have just taken the pawn, because this pawn is actually hanging. And then after it takes, I can just move back, or move here, or I can even choose to defend my bishop here with king d3, or even something like knight g5. So this would have been much more active and much more accurate and materialistic even. So a bit of a miss there. But I played bishop knight g6, trying to damage his structure, and then win the pawn this way, so that I didn't give his rook the opportunity to come to the h file, because I wanted to move my rook and tuck my king in the corner, and if his rook was on the h file, it would make things a bit harder. But instead of moving the rook to the h file, I moved the rook to the f file, f8, which makes sense because he wants to line up with my king. So I copy him, like I play rook f1, and I want to tuck my king into the corner here. Knight a5, a bit too slow. I think his idea was to move here and target the pawn. I just play rook g1, keep my king safe, knight c4, attack my pawn here, and threaten to fork at the same time. So I played queen e1, offering a trade since I feel like I'm still up a pawn. I can try and win this, and my position is better. So we do trade, and here my knight, the problem with my position is that my knight doesn't have many squares to go to. So you'll notice that my rook is blocking my knight, and this square is protected by his outpost, and he always have nagging pressure on my e-pawn. So my knight is a bit troubled over here, and it's going to be hard for me to stop his a-pawn from running. So here, because of my misevaluation, I know that in this position I was better, and this was not so much. So I think one of the moves were bad. Maybe trading queens was bad, and maybe taking it to rook is bad. So maybe since I had to give up this pawn to go after this pawn in the first place, maybe I shouldn't have taken with rook, and maybe instead I should have taken with knight and activate my pieces this way instead, or maybe just trade and go after this instead. So maybe this would have been better. But in the game I played rook takes, so rook a8. He's trying to defend and push his pass pawn, so bishop d3. I move my king more towards the center first. a4, pass pawns must be pushed. Rook a1, stopping the pass pawn. a3 is still defended by a knight. Rook e1. Now I want to play rook c2 to go after the pawn. Rook f8 check, which is a bit of a mistake because I felt like his rook was perfectly fine doing that. Well, why is he moving his rook here? I just slide my king closer to where the action is. Rook a8 again, and I play knight c2. So he's up on time as well. He's 7 minutes against my 5 minutes. So there's no reason why he should be making those kinds of checks. So here I'm threatening to take and take the pawn. So he plays rook knight b2, which blunders the pawn. So I take with the rook. He takes the rook. I take the knight, and my knight will be able to get back into the game very quickly. After some sort of let me see. Maybe just knight c2 back, and come here and fight on the king side over here. So he takes my bishop, trying to prove that his bishop is better than my knight. I don't think that's the case because all my pawns are on dark squares, and I have 2 on 1 here on the king side, and I'm up 2 pawns. So if anyone is better, it should be me. However, I didn't do too well converting this endgame. I think there are many points of which I made some mistakes. For example, he played g5 here, played knight c2, getting my knight back into the game to target the pawns. Bishop c6, just defending. Maybe he could have played this instead. Play knight here, and knight f3. So I got what I wanted. King g6, and here I made I think not the right approach. I don't know if it's losing or drawing or anything, but during the game, it felt more intuitive to me that I wanted my king on the king side because that's where all the pawns are, right? All the pawns are here. If I want to defend or I want to attack, that's where I should be, right? But after the game, I felt that it would have been much better if I went king c3 instead. Now this move at first glance looks counterintuitive because I'm moving away from the action. Like, all the action is here. All the action is here. What am I doing? What am I doing running away? But the truth is, his pawns are on light squares. His bishop is a light square bishop. I actually have a very clear path to infiltrate. Very clear path to infiltrate. He will have to defend his pawn like somewhere here. So he may infiltrate. He will have to defend his pawn like this, or maybe keep his king passive. And with my knight, I'll be able to gang out the pawn and make a pass pawn and push it. So that should have been my approach. And looking in retrospect after the game, that was so obvious. But instead, I played king e2, going closer to where the action is. Bishop b5 checking. This doesn't do anything. This helps me move closer. King f2, bishop d3. Now he wants to create some sort of fortress like this. Maybe to get some sort of light square blockade. I play knight d2 to try and stop him from playing either moves, because I think I'll be very happy just chopping the bishop off and flexing my 2 pawns. So instead, he takes the opportunity to move his king further with king f5. I play knight b3. Now trying to get pressure on this pawn instead and on this bishop, but he plays move bishop a6. So trying to go back and defend the pawn this way, so that I can never get pressure on both the bishop and the pawn. So knight c5, I go complete my plan. I'm going with tempo, playing this move with tempo. He plays bishop c8 as planned. Play king f3, trying to getting opposition, pushing my king forward. And I managed to get a reaction out of g4, and this is good because now this pawn cannot be defended sufficiently. So after king g3, this move isn't possible because my knight is guarding that square conveniently, so his king has no entry squares. It has to move to g5. And here I decided to play h4, pushing the king back. And after en passant, I take with the h pawn, so now I have an outside pass pawn. So king h5. Standing in the way stubbornly, and here I play e4. So my idea was to force the king to look at the h pawn, force the king to go after the h pawn, and infiltrate with this pawn sacrifice over here and win the game. And while it is of course winning, what I could have done, which I saw after the game, was that I could have made this more potent with h4 first. Because h4 actually takes away this square, and with my king still here guarding, and he has no good moves with the bishop, he has no good moves with the pawn, this would have forced him to, in some sort of a zugzwang, and force him to move backwards. If he wants to go closer to the pawns, then or if he wants to maintain on the h file, now this idea becomes a lot more stronger after like something like if he goes here, if it goes here, I can go opposition, I can maintain opposition, and if he goes here, I can go the opposite side. And if he goes h6, I think I can still go g4, advance my king further, try to push him back. He still can't advance. And then if he gets opposition, now I think this move is a lot stronger. So that h4 was what I should have played to push my king back, push his black king back. But instead, I sacrificed right away, and I think I'm still better though, because after knight takes e4, I reroute my knight to a better square. So again, I'm pressuring, forcing his bishop to do pawn guarding duty. And again, I should have played h4 for the same reason, to push his king back, because he has no good moves with his pawn or his bishop. So instead, I played king here, thinking that I had enough time, that if he takes here, oops, wait, what is it? The main problem here is that I don't have the move I was planning to play, which is king e4, because the bishop is guarding that, and this square is also guarded, and now his king is opposition, so I can't move in. So this was a mistake, because now I have to waste a move somehow, and then after it takes here, take the pawn, and here he's in time to pick off some of my pawns and make things a bit harder or something like that. Because I have to waste a move with my knight, so my knight will be so optimally placed to take the pawn, and I have to waste another move to target the pawn again, so he's in time to make things tougher. So knight e4, if trades, then I'm completely winning. If trades, then I can get a pass pawn. But of course he doesn't do that. He takes the h pawn instead, and now my king is also tied to guarding this knight. So I play knight f6 first, trying to chase the bishop away, and get my king in. However, this move also sort of makes my king infiltration a bit slower, so that is probably something wrong. So maybe with that in mind, since it makes my king advancement slower, maybe I should have chased the bishop away with knight c3 instead, which is the same idea, but doesn't stop my king from infiltrating, and it on the converse side, it prevents it denies some squares from black's king when black wants to try and grab my pawn. But in the game I played knight f6, bishop c4, king f6, king g5, king g3, and here you can see how much of an issue this knight is, because I have to go all the way here to go after this pawn. However, again, this shouldn't have been a big issue, because I should have realized that this is the way to go, and I could have spent some time to play knight e4 with check, and after the king moves, I could have a fork over here. So his king again could have moved forward and would have to move back because I have opposition here, and I can take the pawn easily. So a lot about this endgame is knowing not the physical direct distance or displacement is not the most important thing in the endgame. That doesn't represent activity. The physical distance doesn't matter if you have no excess squares, no entry squares, no infiltration squares, or if your path is longer, even if your displacement is very close. Your distance is very close, your displacement is still large. So that is something to take away from this game. But in the game after king f4, and now things are starting to get a bit more trickier, because although he doesn't have this e4 square, he has this e3 square to go after my pawn, and after king f7, king e3, d5, I try to get him to take with the bishop so I can push my pass pawn faster and things like that. But he takes with the pawn, I push, and I miss that I actually have pinned myself because of all this. Because of placing my knight here on f6, I prevented my king from moving on the dark squares, put my king on light square, and this actually serves fatal, because although my pawn is more advanced, he's the one with the pin, and this is nothing more than a draw. So after d4, I can no longer push my pawn. I'm forced to go after his pawn, and after this here, I go after the bishop. He takes, I take, and he cannot advance his pawn. So it ends with a draw because due to insufficient material. So the first game was a draw, a bit of a disappointing game from both sides, because we made a lot of mistakes from the early game to the mid game to the end game, and but still, it was still kind of educational, I guess. In the second game, this was the most tilting game. From an emotional standpoint, this was very, very terrible, because again I managed to get into a better position after d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, bishop e4, Bogo Indian, and bishop d2, normal, a5 with wave floor variation, a3, bishop d2, bishop takes d2, knight takes d2, castles, e4, d6, bishop e2, bishop d7, knight b d7, castles, rook e8, not rook e8. I think up till here everything is theory. So everything is all theory, and then I think the main move here is e5. But I wanted to prepare it first, so I played rook e8, and I think it's still normal. So rook e1, counteracting that, and here e5. So d5 is a mistake, because strategically you're giving up your dark squares against black's two knights and light square bishop. So you are blocking in your own light square bishop, so this is strategically better for black. I play knight c5 immediately, applying pressure on this pawn, and sort of threatening to get in all the weak squares in white's position. So he plays bishop f1, trying to maintain control over the pawn while not playing bishop d3 and just plundering his bishop. So I play bishop g4, pinning the knight, just trying to apply more pressure over here. h3, bishop d7. I wanted to reroute the bishop to this diagonal instead. Although in retrospect, I probably should have taken the knight, because in this close position, knights are much better than bishops. So bishop d7, I move my bishop back. b4. Here, I probably should have taken the opportunity to infiltrate further with knight a4. Get a nice square here, and if he tries to maybe in the future try to attack my knight, I can then play a takes b. But instead, I play a takes b first immediately, which is slightly unpleasant, because after a takes b4, bishop a4 with tempo, queen c1, knight cd7. This has more nagging pressure, because my bishop is more loose, and white gets the counterplay on the queen side, which is after. Wait, let me go back to d5. Yeah, so in this position, right, black's advantage is more active pieces and dark square, like pawns on dark squares, pieces on light squares, and a lot of light square control. And white has more boxed-in pieces. However, in white's counterplay comes with his easy queenside expansion and counterplay on the a file. So I allowed that counterplay from white, which is probably due to some mistakes in earlier. Probably not because I didn't play knight a4, and because I go for this weird knight d7 bishop a4 line, where my bishop is weak with no retreating squares, and I'm pretty much forced to play b5 at some point to protect my bishop. So c5, probably to take and get more space on the queen side. And I should have stopped this with something like b takes, and probably played this position. But I was worried about hanging my bishop, so I just played b5 instantly. And after c6, now I'm a bit more suffocated. I don't get my nice pieces. I still try to maneuver my knight, so with knight b6, maybe I come here, but that would only help white by trading off his light square bishop. So my knight is sort of here guarding the bishop. My bishop is sort of trapped. Can't really do anything. Bishop e2. My guess is now that the pawn's pressure is not so strong, the pressure on the pawn is not so strong anymore, he wants to trade off the light square bishops. But at this point, I don't mind trading off light square bishops, because my bishop is so bad, and trading will only help me retain control over the a file. So knight h5, I try to go for this square instead. Bishop d1, I continue my plan because I don't mind the trade. Bishop takes, and I take with knight. So now my knight has some better prospects. Knight b3. Now he's going for this outpost. Knight d3, forking, and also forking this pawn. So I take the material and I retreat and I try to trade pieces. So he gets this very deep outpost, but I try to expand and trade pieces and just get an easier position. So after knight d2, I take the pawn, he takes with the knight, I take with the rook, I just trade down massively, take the pawn, and here I think I just wanted to trade, so I played queen e8, but I wonder if there's any better knight moves. Maybe moving a knight back was objectively better, or maybe moving a knight to trade the knight over here. But I played queen a8 to try and force a queen trade, but giving up this pawn. So after queen takes here, I think I could have played. I remember I saw a move here. There was something that I missed here. For what it was. But I remember seeing that I had a better move in this position other than what I played, because now he's trying to take my knight, but I remember I had some sort of way out of it. Instead I played queen a1, check, and then defending my knight this way. But this makes things a bit trickier because his pieces are very close. my king is more in danger than his king, and he can try and create a pass pawn. So he takes this pawn to get these two connected pass pawns. I saw that, but I thought it was completely fine because I can because after he takes this pawn, I can just move my rook away, c7, I can take the pawn, and here he's threatening to take my knight, of course, and there's a lot of pressure here on this f7 square and on my back line. So here I was starting to feel a little bit of pressure, but although objectively I knew I was completely fine, I was starting to have a little bit of some doubts. So because I was much lower on time as well, I still have 4 minutes and he has 6 minutes. And was it here? I think it was here that I could have played some knight move, but instead I check first so that if he blocks, I can take and then I'm winning. If this, I'm mating. So I'm forcing him to move the king, and now my queen is also helping to guard this f7 square. And here he cannot take my wait, what did I plan to do? Here I saw that he could have picked up my knight either way, but I thought my pressure here was strong enough. So I decided to give my knight this way, knight d5, so that if he doesn't see the double attack, I can take his pawn. And if he does, I'm still better anyway, and I want to and I think I'm still winning in this position, but I'm more playing for a draw, I think, at this point, because I wasn't able to cleanly convert, because now he's also threatening stuff like knight f7, and there'll be a windmill or some sort of discovery going on there. Here I take the pawn to basically get a draw, essentially. After b5, I now have a draw after I can just keep checking over here. And for the same reasons, he cannot play it here because this would be easily winning for me. So instead I decide to check, and then you can see that my time is running down a lot. From here, I have 1 minute 36 seconds, and after checking a few times, I only have 12 seconds. The reason for this is because I thought I would just repeat, and I thought this was 3-4 repetition. But I forgot that the first time my queen went down, it was to take the pawn on f2 instead of checking the king. So this is actually, I only repeated the position twice. Okay, what is the red dot? Never mind. I only repeated the position twice. So here I was panicking a little bit because I only have 12 seconds, he has 5 minutes, and he decided to play g3. So this was obviously a mistake because I have here, I actually have force mate, I think, with either here or here, I think. And he can't really stop me from playing rook f2. If he tries to check, I can just come back and take. So this is what I should have played, but with low time, I decided to just trade things off because that was the obvious move. I just trade, and I come here, I try to take the pawn, and I just move the rook in, I move the king in, and here he just flagged me. It's 10+0. My ping is not perfect, and I just got flagged in this drawn position. So I was super tilted because of this, because I thought it was threefold, and then he just purposely went into a losing position just so that he can flag me. And although it's part of the game, I was super triggered here. So now I'm down 0.5 to 1.5, and I am the one who has to come back in my next 2 games. So in the next game, I'm playing with white, so I was very triggered. So when I'm triggered and I'm not having fun anymore, I don't play e4, I play knight f3. So d5, d4, d6, c4 we go into the normal Queen's Gambit 3 knights variation. So bishop e7, bishop f4, Harrowit's attack, a6, a3. I think all normal stuff. castles e3, bishop d7, b d7, d3, takes e4, bishop takes, b5, d3, b7. These are all like very standard ideas. Castles, c8, knight e5, c5. I think all maybe some inaccurate moves or like some non-theoretical moves in the middle, but everything is still very thematic and very human. So after d takes c5, knight bishop takes c5. Still a very equal position. Knight takes, knight here. Try and maneuver my pieces to more active squares towards the enemy king. Knight g3, f6. Wait, actually, wait. Knight g3 is actually a mistake because here he can trap my bishop with g5. I missed this during the game, but he can play g5 to trap my bishop. My bishop has no good squares to go. Guarded. And yeah, he will be winning in this position. But fortunately for me, he just played all the normal moves as well, knight f6, and now I managed to get my maneuver with king e2, queen e2. And now g5 doesn't work anymore because it's no longer guarded by the bishop. Queen d5, lining up some sort of attack, but I can just play f3. I'm trying to play e4. So fd8, fd1, defend my bishop. Queen b3, trying to assert pressure on my position. I just play e4. Bishop c5 check and get my king into safety. And here he blundered with knight h5, and I just took the free knight. So at first I thought it was some sort of diversion sacrifice, and I took some time to calculate. But after looking at it for a while, I thought that maybe it's no matter what it is, I just let him prove it. So took a knight and he resigned this position. Turns out it was just a one move blunder, and it was his turn to become tilted. So the fourth game, now we are drawn 1.5 to 1.5. So both of us have to win, or we have to go into Armageddon. So here he plays e4, I play e5. Wait, it's the wrong orientation. We should swap it around. Just swap it around. Second. Which game was it again? Oh, my last game against Yuki. And my last game against Yuki. Okay, so this is the right orientation, and so I play my usual stuff: e4, e5, knight c3, knight f6, d3. So this is a bit inaccurate, but of course it's still fine. I was expecting a Vienna Gambit because that is what normally people play when they go into the Vienna game. And after d3, bishop b4, bishop d2, d5. Black just gets to enjoy more centralized pieces. So bishop knight g2, c6, g3, which all just developing. Bishop g4, trying to take advantage of his weakened knight squares. Bishop g2, knight takes c3. He has to take with the pawn because he doesn't want to double his pawns up later. Let's retreat my bishop, knight c5. Now in Fianchetto structures, this pawn is exceptionally weak over here because of all the emptiness. So put my bishop on this diagonal. Castles, I castle, rook e1, rook e8, queen b1, so targeting my pawn over here. And give me a moment. I have to reply to something. Give me a moment. Okay, I need to handle this first. Oh wait, my camera was lagging. Never mind. Alright. Okay. So here he's trying to attack my b pawn and take advantage of the open b file, but after bishop d6 just covering, I'm able to still keep control of everything, and I'm still slightly better. So after c4, he opens up a lot of dark square weaknesses, and I would like to get my queen to this diagonal to maybe take advantage of that. So I played knight d4, getting in, and he takes, and I take with the e pawn. So taking the e pawn is probably a mistake. I should have taken with the d pawn because it comes with tempo. And but what was the problem? I think I saw ghosts about queen takes b7, but it shouldn't be an issue because I could have just taken the exchange here. Yeah. And if he tries to kick my bishop away, I can always just go back. So this was probably a mistake by me. I should have taken with the pawn. And let me see, where am I? Wait, which move is this again? Yeah, here. So I should have taken with the pawn. He played rook e4, trying to go after my bishop and my pawn over here. But actually, this just helps me because I think after I take, I'm the one with the better structure, and I think I'm slightly better over here. Maybe it's equal, but after rook b8, I want to move my bishop and try to alleviate this pressure from his queen and bishop pair over here. a4, insisting on kicking out my bishop. I probably should have played something like a5, but then he could have played c5. So I played c5 instead, so that at least I can defend this pawn. And after a5, I just played bishop c7, queen f1, inviting him to taking with the bishop. That will only just pin his bishop to his queen. So he doesn't do that. He plays queen f1 first, queen d7, trying to get here, and then he attacks the pawn this way instead. However, this gives me bishop h3, which forces his queen back, and I get to play bishop d6. So I'm defending the pawn this way. Plays f4, which is a bit weakening. Not really sure what the purpose was. I would have expected something like rook b1 to apply more pressure here instead, but I played b6, so I want to get my pawns on all the dark squares since he doesn't have a dark square bishop. Over here he trades. I take with the rook because I want to pass pawn. I felt that his structure would obstruct him from being able to defend the a file properly. If I took with the a pawn, I would have a backwards pawn for him to target, although there isn't much for him to target. There isn't much for him to target with, and it'll take some time, but this would be a structural weakness, and if I ever push it, it will help solve his structural problem instead. So I took with the rook, bishop d5, solidifying everything. I play g6, so maybe I want to reroute my bishop here and create some air for my king. So queen e4, I just retreat my rook. I can't really play this yet, but it's on the agenda. Bishop g5. Now I give a lot of control to my opponent, a lot of initiative to my opponent here. I play queen d7, bishop c6, and here I probably should have just calmly retreated queen c8, and everything is still fine. Everything is still equal, but I decided to trade queens here instead because I felt that it would help me save time to remaneuver my bishop. But instead, that gave his rook a lot of control because he manages to win my pawn after bishop here, and you can see that this bishop pair is actually very annoying. It's controlling a lot of squares, and I don't really have the tactic of rook c8, which I tried anyway in the game, because after rook takes a7, he's now defending his bishop, and he's also looking at my bishop, which is undefended on e7. So I play bishop f8, so I'm getting the bishop free, and maybe in the future I want to target the bishop here. He plays bishop d7 to, I guess, force my rook, because it looks like he's taking up all the squares that my rook can go to. However, he missed the fact that my bishop that has been here a couple of moves ago actually is able to take this undefended bishop, and he blundered the piece and resigned in this position. So it wasn't good for either of us. Both of us were very tilted throughout all 4 games, and it was very dirty. All the games were very dirty. With that painful game out of the way, up next, we are in the top 3 already. Because Sashi was disqualified because of the cheating investigations that proved to be true, and he confessed everything. So I managed to skip a game and played Yuki. So he got 4th place, and now I'm in the losers bracket finals against Pop Pop. His lichess name is Paka Brea, and this was a lot more smoother than the game against Yuki. So that's why I felt kind of bad for Yuki as well, because both of us played very dirty, very objectively bad chess, and in my opinion, both of us should have been playing in the losers bracket instead of in the, I guess, earlier round. But such is the way of tournaments. Luck is involved as well, and he faced Meridian earlier than Pop Up, so too bad for him. Here, with my confidence back again, after all, I already achieved all my goals. As long as the first game isn't too tilting, I'm fine with playing e4. So I just decided to play e4. He surprised me with Loki's defense. So as you have known from earlier this stream and from my previous streams, you will know that this is one of my openings that I enjoy playing. So being a Loki player, I was very happy to see this, because I felt that I had a lot of winning chances. So I decided to go for the modern main line with e5, knight d5, d4, d6, d6, knight f3, bishop g4, bishop e2. So this is all theory. The idea is that I don't want to kick the knight away too soon, but instead I want to fortify my pawn first. So I play d4, and then d6, trying to disrupt this pawn center. So I play knight f3, controlling it. This is the modern way to play. And black is suffocated, so black wants to trade pieces. So with this convenient square to develop the bishop, black normally develops bishop g4, and bishop e2 is one of the lines here, one of the options here to try and take advantage of black's willingness to trade. With after bishop e2, bishop takes, and now white has a very beautiful diagonal over here, and it's ready to castle. So this knight is tender, and this pawn is also very tender. Here he plays a mistake of playing bishop d takes e5, which is thematic, trying to defend the knight with the pawn and break down white's pawn center. However, in this position specifically, in this variation specifically, black has to play smarter to counteract white's idea of having this very early knight square bishop on this beautiful diagonal. He should have played something like c6 to defend, not only defend the knight, but to also structurally defend from this bishop over here. Because the issue with d takes e5, which he played in the game, is due to the fact that white can play c4. So kicking the knight away and winning the rook. So e takes d4, he tries something. I take with bishop so that I can still maintain this threat. If he plays knight here, I'm willing. If he plays knight to c6, I'm willing to trade up material because I'm up a knight, and I'll be completely winning in this position, easily winning in this position. So instead, he plays c6, and I just retreat my bishop. E5, and here I actually gave him a lot of unnecessary counterplay. So after castles, bishop e7, b3, castles, I played bishop a3, simply trading pieces. After c5, denying my trade, I played rook e1, targeting this pawn over here. Instead, I probably should have just taken the pawn over here and won the rook, but I played rook e1, knight c6, and here only I trade pieces, and I take the pawn. So rook takes, just draw back, and I want to just develop my knight over here. However, d3 happened, and now he's able to win back an exchange. Of course, I'm still better, but not so much. Knight takes c5, rook e8. Probably a blunder. He should have taken the rook first, because now I have time to trade and play rook knight d2, and here I thought I had solved all my problems, which actually objectively I have. I think there's no way for black to win this, but his queen paralyzing everything in my position was actually quite annoying to navigate through. Play a5 here, and here I should have played something like h3 to free up my queen, and then my queen can do stuff, and then I can just leave all of this here. I don't really have to care about it. But instead I played queen f1 with the fact that if he trades, I'm actually completely winning. But I realized that he isn't actually forced to trade, because if he does something else like rook e3, rook e8, I am the one who cannot take, because I have no way of defending against this promotion. So I then realized that queen f1 was a mistake. But fortunately for me, he played a4, which is a bit too slow. I think he should have played rook e8 earlier. I played b4 because I didn't want him to take and allow another piece into the game. And here he played rook b8 going after my pawn, which only allowed me to solidify with a3. So again, I felt that he should have played rook e8. He had many opportunities to play rook e8 earlier, because of a specific idea which he did eventually find, which I'll show you later. So after king f8, I tried to spend the time to unwind with queen a8, queen a1, and I want to do the same thing of like h3 and let my queen do stuff. He finally plays rook e8, and here I play h3, but it's a bit too late because of this idea. I should have played queen d4 first, and allow checks and let my knight guard my king. The pawn can let me just put this on the board. So I should play queen d4, and if check, just block. Here I can win the pawn, and this will be safely and convincingly winning. But instead, I decided to go for my same plan, but it was a bit too slow, because after h3, planning to go queen d4 next, it's a bit too late, because now he has rook takes e3. I have to take with the pawn. He takes my pawn with check, and then he managed to win my knight. So now he is the one up a pawn, and up a very dangerous pass pawn at that. So I play queen d4 now, guarding the pawn from behind, threatening some checks, and after queen e2, threatening to escort the pawn, I check a lot. Just check a lot, and here actually I should have taken with check, because eventually he manages to get out of check and trade queens. So this is completely winning endgame for him, because his pawn is simply too advanced. I tried to run back with my king, and at this point just praying for something good to happen. But fortunately for me, he moved a little too quickly. He played king e4 instantly, because he wanted to escort the pawn. However, the escortion was not necessary at all, because he could have just played d2, and I wouldn't be able to stop him from queening. However, thanks to this blunder, I was able to play king f2, and now my king is actually within the box of stopping the pawn. So now he actually has to defend. Again. Actually has to move his king into escort, but through this route instead. So he played king d4, trying to come and escort here, and I played a very terrible move, because I should have played c5 here, and now he's the one who has to chase after my passed pawn, and I'm completely winning. However, I played king e1, which is a blunder. This is not necessary. I should have played c5 instead, because here now he has king c3, king d1, king takes c4, king d2, king d4, and now I'm sort of in zugzwang because I don't really have any good moves. He can keep this position, he can keep his king here forever, and push his kingside pawns with something like h5 immediately. But after d4, I try the only thing I can, which is to push my trying to lock the pawns, waste some time. g4, g5, so fixing my pawns. b5, just trying to push whatever is possible. King c5, I take the pawn. King takes b5, I move my pawn, my king in, and after this move here, I play king d4, so trying to box his king in and go for the queen side. And here he plays a mistake, king f6. Here he should have played something like king c6, because he always has time to go back if I go towards this pawn, and if we both can't move our kings, he has the pawn majority to create a passed pawn. And if I want to go for his pawns here, he's able to retreat back in time. However, due to his time wasted with f6, I'm able to play this move here, king d5, gaining opposition this way, and now I'm in time to actually win the pawns. So he's forced to play king a5. I play not king e6 because that will allow him to have more time, but instead I play king c5, so forcing him to make either king a6 or to push f5 and allow me to get a passed pawn. So he's forced to play king a6, and here I got a little bit greedy and played king b4, and this is a mistake because he can now play king b6. What I should have done was to force the draw with king c6, and after this, there's no way for us to advance. So this would have been a dead draw. But instead, I got a bit greedy and I tried to win the pawn with I can win the pawn, I will win the pawn, but this isn't very good because after king b6 opposition, takes a4, king c6, now he's in time to actually be better now. So king b4, I take advantage of his waste of time, and now I'm completely winning because after king b6 opposition, I can push my pawn. a6, I can push my pawn, force his king back, gain opposition. His king retreats, I can push my pawn again, and this position is completely winning because where it would normally be stalemate if, let's say, his king can move, like let's say here and here, this is not stalemate because he has to move. And I would be better, and that's why I would be completely winning. So here is his king cannot move, and he's forced to push one of the pawns, which will give me a passed pawn. So I push h5, I take, and now I have a fast passed pawn. f5, I just push, push, and I queen with mate. So I win the first game, but it was very scary in the middle where he managed to create a very strong counterplay. Could have done it quicker, but just shows how a few moves can quickly change the game. Even if pieces are tied down, time is still important. So in the next game, I played e4. He played e4, and I was planning to play the Loki before the game, because that was what I felt like playing. But since he's an Loki player, I didn't want to play that against him. So instead, I played e5, knight f3, knight f6, takes e5, knight c6. I went for a Untitled Gambit instead. I mean, I'm a game ahead. So he plays d4, which is sort of a transposition into the modern variation of the Petrov defense. I just take the pawn, knight f3, knight f6, retreating, c4. He's applying a lot of pressure here, but I have queen e7, queen e3, which is a bit of a mistake. So here my threat was to just take the pawn and win the pawn, but here his best try is probably to take with bishop and play this position. And I think normally people go here or here and try to attack my king. It will still be very equal though. But instead he decides to play queen e3, so a bit more passive and no longer attacking me anymore. So I take time to play d5, gain some space, develop my pieces, and get very comfortable here. So here actually knight e5, knight e4 was a mistake, which I didn't notice until he played bishop a4, and here I realized that I was losing already, because no matter what I do, he will be able to... What was the tactic that I saw? Oh yeah, he'll be able to win my knight, because after knight bishop d7, defending my okay, let's say I don't do anything. If I don't do anything, at the very least he will be able to win the exchange. Not just win the exchange, win a rook. And if I try to defend my knight with bishop d7, which I did in the game, hoping that he wouldn't find it, he actually has this nice sequence of knight takes, queen takes, bishop takes, queen takes, and f3, and he will win my knight on e4. So fortunately for me, he didn't find this tactic. Instead, he played knight c3, which was still this tactic was still available because of this vision, but allowed me to, if he's not finding this move, he won't find it in the future, I think. So I just try and trade the important pieces away, take the knight, take the bishop, and we liquidate down into a equal, he's slightly better endgame. Not really endgame, I guess middle game. So in this position, I'm much more comfortable. I just decide to castle, get out of dodge, queen d4, king b8, always play king b8, defend your a pawn, bishop e3, piling on more there. I just play b6. I'm fine with it because I can expand on the queen side. Rook a d1, I play c5. I want to kick the queen away. Queen f4, trying to threaten some nasty discoveries. So I just block the pawn. c3, g6, I want to develop my bishop this way, put a lot of pressure on this e-pawn and try to win it. So rook d3, bishop g7, so piling some pressure here. Queen here. I think this was quite a tricky move because he's trying to get me to take the pawn and get me with this skewer. So tricky idea from him, but after bishop takes, okay, let's say if I take with the queen, he has this skewer over here and I'll be lost. But I take with the bishop instead, rook e1, maybe trying to threaten some discoveries, but I see that it's nothing. I just play queen f6, kick his queen around, queen f7, move my queen away from the diagonal, and my position is completely consolidated. He plays b4, which is a bit hasty. I thought that I would be completely winning. Not really completely winning. I was better after almost any move. And objectively, the best way to punish it would probably be something like c4 and force his rook back, maybe here, and play this position. I'll win this pawn, and I'll win this pawn next. If he tries to defend it, then I'll just be a pawn up with two connected pass pawns. But I felt that just in case that I missed something, I didn't want to put my pawns on light squares and make this a weak pawn, a backwards pawn. So instead I decided to play d4, which is still winning because almost everything wins here. After c takes d4, I take with bishop, although I probably should have taken a pawn to get a connected to get a pass pawn, but instead I take with bishop because I want to trade pieces instead. Bishop f4 check, avoiding the trade. King b7, b takes, and I take with bishop. So again, maybe I should have taken with the c pawn, but I wanted to keep things consolidated. I'm still have a pawn. As long as I don't do anything too rashly, I should still be better. We trade rooks, which is better for me because I'm up material. I want to trade. Queen h3, and really trying to get to the light squares, and I take the opportunity to take the pawn. So he takes the pawn. I move my king, and after rook g3, because I'm applying a lot of pressure here on this f pawn, I just retreated my queen to. I decided to play this very cheeky tactic, queen e2. If he takes, then I can checkmate him. And if he tries to maintain on the first rank like he did with rook a1, I can just move my king up to king b5. And I thought that he couldn't really go after my pawn because I'll be able to win like this. So he played h3, stopping any back rank ideas, but I can still force a trade of rooks. And after trading rooks, I'm now up. I now have two connected pass pawns over here, and my king is relatively safe. After king h2, I play queen c2, just trying to defend this pawn and to try and stop all the checks. Plays queen h4. Probably should have taken my pawn when he could, but I would have been free from checks, I think. So he plays queen h4 instead, trying to keep his checks alive and target this pawn. So I play g5, just defending it while also attacking the queen at the same time. Queen g4, and now I play bishop takes f2, winning a pawn, trying to trade down more pieces. He plays queen d7, checking, and I just try to hide my king here. So this is probably a mistake because I give him this capture with check, which he did fine in the game. I should have just moved up, continue moving up, and she doesn't really have any checks except for moving back, and I can move up even further, and then I can be safe in my opponent's side of the board. But I played king a5, which is a mistake. And after takes b5, here I have a lot of check. I have to avoid the checks, but fortunately for me, he trades bishops. I trade down d3. I just keep moving around, trying to avoid perpetual. I think here was the mistake because let me think. Yeah, this was the mistake because checking me on the dark square means that I can come back with my queen and start to stop checks. Because if he kept checking me on the light squares, I don't think I could have gotten out of perpetual. So this would probably have been drawn. Fortunately for me, I am able to come back, and after we didn't trade. He takes the pawn with check again. I go up, and I'm able to avoid trades. And once he takes, this is completely winning for me because I have a pawn. So he shouldn't have traded. Maybe he should have keep trying to find checks. But yeah, his mistake was taking, and in this position I'm completely winning, and just quickly push the pawn, stop him from promoting, and I win on time. So now I'm up 2-0. I have a very big advantage, and going into the third game, I decided to mix things up. So I played e4 already. I'm going to try playing d4 instead. So I played d4, d5, c4, c6. So this is again the Slav defense. Knight f3, knight f6, and here I go for my Breyer variation, and he surprised me with e6, going for a semi-Slav. So he told me, wait, this is not semi-Slav. Is it semi-Slav? I think this is Slav. Or is it semi-Slav? I think it's semi-Slav, right? Because the bishop is not developed yet. So he told me that he also played a mistake. He wanted to play bishop f5, which is the normal Slav defense, but he instead instantly played e6 and transposed into some sort of semi-Slav, which he was unfamiliar with. And that threw me off as well, because I expected this move order to mean that he was going to play a Slav defense. So I decided to try and get my bishop to g5 by playing knight b3. He plays knight a6, which is a mistake, I think, because it doesn't come in time. After bishop g5, bishop e7, unpinning, I can play e3, h6, takes, and c takes d5. And now I'm actually threatening to take the knight here. So e takes d5 is a mistake because it completely shatters the queenside position. If he takes with the c pawn, at least here he has more play on the queen side to try and defend his structure. Well, his pieces have more access to the queen side, I should say. But e3, h6, okay, and then here I shatter his pawn side, his queen side with bishop takes a6, because now after b takes a6, now he has two weaknesses on the queen side, and I can get my king safely castles, and I have a lot of targets, and he doesn't have enough access to all of his weaknesses. So I c1 attacking this weak pawn, queen d6 defending, c5 applying pressure to this pawn now, rook a1, I just defend the pawn with my queen and also apply more pressure here on this pawn. Rook e8, maybe trying to get some tactics here. Oh, my throat is starting to get dry again, but maybe trying to find some tactics here, but my knight is protected and my knight can retake the bishop if he tries to take here on d4. So the pin is not an issue, so I just play rook c2, trying to double up and apply more pressure here on his position. He played bishop f5, probably bishop g4 was better, but I just played rook b3, rook b6 defending both pawns, b3 defending my pawn here because I want to double up, remaneuver my queen, and kick the rook out and win the pawn. So a5, trying to relieve some pressure, but after rook fc1, I double up, bishop g4, and here I just play queen d1, preparing to go here, bishop d8, and knight a4. So now I unleash this pressure here and I force the rook to go to a6, because if he retreats back, then this is coming and this is lights out for black. So he plays rook a6, but now I have h3, kicking the bishop away first, and I'm playing queen d3. So now I'm attacking the rook, and a little bit of structural deformation is fine because I can tuck my king to safety. So he plays c5, trying to get some sort of counterplay and defend his rook with his queen. But I just take the pawn with my knight, and now the rook is attacked again. He has to go rook c6, and I move my knight out of the way first before unleashing this. Okay, I parry his threat of queen h2 with g3, and after all is said and done, I have to parry this threat as well, queen d2. I'm actually just moving my queen around randomly. I line it up with this pawn because I'm preparing this next move. After h5, knight b7. So this was the move I wanted to play, attacking the queen, unleashing all the pressure of my double rooks here. Actually, I think earlier I could have already played this. I think already here, I didn't have to move my knight. I could have already played this move, or even this move. So attacking the queen, not here. This move, attacking the queen, or this move, knight e4. So moving forward instead. But I was worried about sacrifices like this, then maybe you would make things messier a bit. So I decided to parry all the threats first. Before finally unleashing this knight b7 move. So he has to move the queen. I win the rook. He tries to take my pawn, but I just win a bishop. I could have alternatively taken this bishop here and still be completely winning. And in this variation, he doesn't even have the threat of bishop takes g6, bishop takes g3. So this could have been a line, but I was feeling confident in my ability that day. So I just decided to win this bishop and apply more pressure here instead, leaving a more passive bishop. So now he moves in here, but I saw that it was nothing after f3. queen takes g3, I can just defend with my queen and everything is fine. So queen takes g2, king takes g2, and here black resigned because I'm up. And exchange, I'm up a rook and a piece. I'm up a rook and a piece, so I'm up in a rook and a piece, so that's why he just resigned this position. And I'm going to win pawn soon. Just going to double up on the 7th file, and I'm just going to win. So 3-0. Since it was best of 4, I just advanced. So in the finals, it was the game that I was just playing. Didn't really focus a lot in the finals against Meridian because I already know that he's on a different level than me. He's 2200, and recently we both competed in he also competed in the National Day Blitz, so he's Singaporean. I won't reveal his identity, but he did quite well in the tournament, and we played this match right after the National Day Jurong Spring National Day Open Blitz. So National Day Blitz tournament. So I was already a bit exhausted from the tournament, and I was already above and beyond my I already achieved my expectations of getting top 8. So this is the final. So yeah, I just decided to try and play some fun chess. So here I played e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, c3. So I go for the Ponziani opening. Knight f6, he goes for the Yenish counter attack. Go for d4, knight takes e4, d5, knight e7, knight e5, and here he blunders with bishop d6. So this is one of the most common opening traps in the Ponziani opening. I was surprised to see him play it, since he's actually quite strong. He's I think candidate master level player. But because he didn't register for FIDE ID and stuff, he doesn't have a title. I don't even know if he has a FIDE. I don't even know if he has a national rating. But yeah, bishop d5. And the problem is after c6, d takes c6, b takes c6. White wins the advantage after knight takes c6, threatening the queen and threatening a discovery. Not just taking an exchange with this, and this, but rather making full here. This is also winning, but taking with the knight is much more venomous. So after the knight takes c6, bishop d6, bishop d7. I take the knight here because a full knight is stronger than an exchange. Actually, I misspoke. I'm too thirsty that I'm not even concentrating well here. Because the reason why I don't take with the bishop is not because of this, but because he can just take with the knight, and here black is relatively fine. So instead I take the free knight over here, and I threaten to take the rook on the next move. So the queen e7, pinning my bishop, I just mirror queen c8, moving the rook out of the way. Bishop f3, retreat, and here I'm completely winning. I just play very solidly, but he managed to get some annoying counterplay with his bishop pair, and I give back an exchange, but I blundered after this is also like here. Yeah, so here after trading everything, I thought it would be a lot easier for me to win, which it is, but I should have played bishop d6, guarding the pass pawn and also preparing to play c5, so pushing my own pass pawn. But instead, I played knight d2, which although goes after the bishop, now gives him a4, and after takes, it's a lot harder to stop this pass pawn. So I blunder instantly with bishop e5 because now he has bishop e8 and he wins one of my bishops, and I resign over here. But here the position is already lost for me, I think. So I'll be forced to play something like g3 or h3. Probably g3 is better because I can get in faster, to avoid back rank issues, so I can stop the pass pawn. but I'll be completely losing already anyway. So in the next game, he decided to play d4. I play knight f6. He decided to play a London defense. He decided to play a London system, and I play the main line with all this and all mainline stuff, and I couldn't find any advantage here, except I was a bit tired, and I just played knight h5, and then knight h5 just blundering the piece, trying for some reason thinking that these pawns meant that the queen couldn't come out or something. I was very tired and losing focus, so I just lost a piece and resigned very quickly. However, I'm actually still completely the position is still completely equal in this position. So maybe I shouldn't have been so ambitious. I was trying to fight back because I already lost the first game, so I was trying to win the next game, but I lapsed in focus and I couldn't find anything in his London system. So in the third game, he started to disrespect me a little bit, I guess. He mentions in the Discord often that he plays the Albion counter gambit, so I was expecting that, and I've never played against the Albion counter gambit before, so I was up to challenge his Albion counter gambit, but instead he surprised me with an England gambit instead, so I just happily take, plays bishop c5, knight f3, defending my pawn preemptively, d6, and here I already noticed that he was pre-moving some stuff, and I was like, oh my god, are you really trying to play a dirty bullet trap against me? So I just developed my pieces. Of course, I could have taken advantage of it better with instead of nice, okay, here and maybe takes here, right? And after this move here, I could have played how do I punish this pre-move again? Wait, what is the normal way to punish it again? I think I'm getting tired from streaming for how many hours? Almost 3 hours. So my concentration is getting a bit lapsed. I'm trying to remember what is the way to punish it again. Like, because this is a very dirty pre-move bullet trick, right? Okay, so let me just explain the trick first. The trap is after this here, the most common move for white is knight f3, which I did play in the game, and then d6, e takes d6. The idea is to pre-move knight e7. So after d takes e7, you can win the queen with bishop takes f6, king takes f6, and queen takes d1 over here. So this is the bullet trap. But there is a way to punish this pre-move by another move. I'm trying to remember what it is. Or maybe it's c takes d6. Wait, how do I punish this already? I think maybe it's queen takes here and punish this pre-move with taking a free bishop. Yeah, I think that's the way to go. To if you know that someone is pre-moving, and I was aware of that, but I felt that if he saw me, I don't think that he would really pre-move knight to e7. So I didn't take the risk, and I didn't throw my queen voluntarily. I still need to win the game. So I decided to play solidly with knight c3 just developing, knight e7. He pre-moved this move. You can see his time from 9:56 is still 9:56 here. I just played e3, stopping his battery, and he was completely out of book. So he completely had no idea what to do in this position because he doesn't play the England, and he only knows this dirty trick, and he was disrespecting me. So kind of. So I was happy to play this position and try to convert my position cleanly this time, because I also had an advantage in the first game, but I failed to convert it cleanly, and now I wanted to win this game. He gave me he gave me a better position. I'm going to try and prove to him that I'm not a pushover, and he cannot just randomly play moves and expect to win. So he played bishop g4, developing naturally, which seems normal. But after h3, bishop takes, queen takes, now he has a weakness here. So d takes e5, he missed this, queen takes b7, and now knight bc6. I play bishop b5, trying to apply more pressure and maybe win something here. So he castles, giving up some material. After queen there, bishop here, he attacks both my pieces, but I have this move, queen a4, defending my bishop still. And after he recaptures back, my idea was knight e4. So knight e4 attacks the bishop and also prepares some forks in the future. So for example, knight b4, here trading, I can now remaneuver my knight to c4 and try to win this c6 knight. So he advances his knight to b4, which is a blunder, because now I can actually win material here. After knight c4, threatening the rook and also threatening the pawn. Rook retreats, and I play knight takes e5. So knight takes e5 threatens a few things. This fork, for example, and maybe this fork in the future as well. But maybe I should have castled first before playing knight takes e5, because he's also counter-threatening this, and I should have consolidated in a better position. I should have just consolidated, get to the safer position. Then only I have time to actually execute all of this without counterplay. So I play knight takes e5. Fortunately, he doesn't find the best move, which is to get out of all of this madness with queen d6. I think is the best move. Attacking my knight, protecting his knight, protecting against all the forks, and yeah, forcing me to retreat. But instead, he played rook e8, getting out of this fork here, and I play rook d1, chasing the queen away. So queen e7, threatening my knight, and I should have still played knight d7, I think, because my knight is protected by my rook, and after he moves his rook, I can get some counterplay there, maybe even win the knight. But instead, I decided to trade knights with, try to force a knight trade with knight c6. He cannot take back, because if he takes back like he did in the game, I have queen takes c6, rook takes b2, and now castles. I'm actually better because of rook d7 coming, and I'll have a lot of pressure and have more active pieces. So although we have equal material here, actually I'm up a pawn still because of I'm still up a pawn, but I'm actually much better, like around 3 pawns up maybe, objectively. However, maybe he could have not taken my knight back. Maybe he could have made another threat with queen e4, with this idea over here. So if I take, does this work? Yeah, this works. So I'll lose my queen. So instead, I cannot take his knight. I will have to take his. I cannot take his rook. I have to take his knight, and after rook takes queen here, queen d7, he would have gotten out of the woods, and this is more equal than what happened in the game. However, he took the knight, which is a mistake, because my point is that I will get a much more active position, and after castling, getting my king safe before playing, getting ready for this move, queen d7, he instead decided to play rook b6 instead to chase my queen out. So I played queen a4, applying pressure on this a pawn here, but also maintaining my idea of rook d6 c6. So c6 is a blunder. Wait, is my connection having a problem again? Am I still live? Okay, I'm still live. Right. So c6 is a blunder because I can play the move rook d3, doubling up, and my rook d7 is getting unstoppable already, and he tried to stop it by contesting my my control of the d5 immediately with rook d8, but this is a blunder thanks to a nice tactic which I spot. Queen takes a7. So the point is, if he takes, I mate him, and if he takes here, I win the queen. And if he tries to go back, I will mate him. Yeah, so he's forced to give up his queen in this position, and here already he resigned. So I managed to win the game. I'm still in it. I have to win the next game in order to get to Armageddon. So 2-1. My hopes are actually still alive. And here he plays another London system. So I tried to get a little more aggressive by playing an accelerated system to counter his London system with quick c5, e3, queen b6, and I misremembered the lines a little bit. After knight c3, I misremembered my lines and played a6, trying to capture on b2. But in this position, because I haven't played knight f6 yet, this is actually a huge blunder because there is knight d5 and knight c7 is unstoppable. So I still take the pawn. He checks me, and we go on a wild goose chase. I try to get my pieces as active as possible, get as much counterplay as possible. Here I managed to win back an exchange, but my position is completely losing. After this king hunt, I lost my bishop, and instead of losing my bishop, I think he actually mismade in a few times throughout the game. I'm a bit tired now, so I'm not sure if I can remember everything. But I think there was one here. Oh yeah, simply check here, taking advantage of the fact my rook is not protecting my 8 rank and my back rank, and just mate. This is forced mate, so he missed this, but instead he won the bishop. I tried doing stuff, winning more material. Like at the very least, if he cannot find mate, I have some material to talk about it. So he applies a lot of pressure here. I'm going to lose it anyway. So I take the pawn here to try and create some sort of perpetual chances, but it's for nothing because after takes, queen takes, again he has a force mate here. Check, move here, check, move here, check. So in this position, he can probably check maybe faster with let me see. I think he has some mate here as well. Maybe here. This might have been force mate as well, but queen h5. I'm just continue running all the way to the other side of the board, trying to eventually get this idea of checking and maybe perpetual on his king. But if he took my rook, for example, if he took my rook, if it this, there wouldn't be really anything. But if he decides to defend here, I can maybe get some sort of perpetual, but not really, and I'll still be lost here, I think. So just some fake hopes. But after chasing my king to the other side of the board, eventually he finally found mate. So here this was my only move because the bishop holds here, the knight holds these squares. I cannot move my king away or else he'll take my queen. So I have to defend with my knight, and after knight takes queen takes c6, it's force mate. So in this position I just resign because after I move, of course he can take the queen, but more importantly, he can just retreat his knight and it's checkmate. Yeah. So that was the last game of the tournament. Meridian got first place. Congratulations to him again, and I got second, which is still a good result, and I managed to get Discord Nitro, so I can now spam whole life emotes in Discord for another month. Yes. And with that being said, that was all for the tournament, and let's see in the winners finals. I lost to Meridian 3-1, and I need to brush up on my London theory to not play to not just draw against it, I guess. Try to find some more aggressive ideas and to revise my line so that I don't make the same A6 mistake as I did in my last game. So yeah, again the standings. You go to the other scene. I ended the tournament winning 8 games, losing 2 games. Winning 8 matches, losing 2 matches. One of the matches against a computer cheater. So another match against a CM level player. So definitely happy with this tournament. And now that I've successfully reviewed all of the recent tournaments that I've played, the Jurong Spring National Day Blitz and this Sharks and Pirates Open Chess Open Invitational, I can finally get to analyzing these games objectively with the help of an engine and with more focus, more careful analysis in the critical positions, and look at lines that I don't want other people to see now. So with that being said, this has been a very long stream. I've been streaming for 3 hours. Thanks for watching, anyone who dropped by. I saw a few people drop by throughout the stream. Thanks for watching, and see you all next time, I guess. And I'll move over to the end card.